Hey, let's start the show.
For Thursday, June 3rd, 2021. Welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com. Hello and welcome to the podcast this week. I'm Norm, joined by two fantastic colleagues. We have looking really good. You have really nice camera setup there. Kishore, Hari, how you doing? How's the NHL doing?
I watch hockey 90% of the time now. I'm 90% hockey, 10% science, and I'm happy with
it. and you know, football probably once that kicks in the session, seeing the helmet behind you.
We'll see. Norm, you're popping a little bit, but
I'm popping.
While you're fixing that, special guest this week, Bill Doran from Punish Props and Bill Doran Stuff.
Speaking of bills, right? Am I right?
Oh, nice.
Well done.
My favorite.
Only a fellow upstate New Yorker would do that for me. Thank you, Bill.
It was my favorite team growing up because Buffalo was about an hour and a half away from Oswego, New York, where I grew up. And also the name, mostly the name. I could buy shirts with my name on them and be like, I'm a fan of me.
Bill Doran, of course, Punish Props Academy, also part of our Tested family. I love that you guys both have helmets in the background. Bill, you have a nice IKEA Kallax of your prop helmets. Is that a Stormtrooper one? The white one? That one right there?
That's a Tank Commander.
Tank Commander.
From Rogue One. Although it's a little bit stylized. Yeah, we got a Mando. Oh, you're right. The Tank Commander was in the Mando.
Yeah. I love your IKEA detail with the Lego there. We're going to be talking about all sorts of Lego, but it's been a while since we've checked in with you. I think the last time we talked on a podcast was when you guested on Still Entitled when we were still doing that. But how is life going on up in the Northwest? How's your shop? How are things?
Things have changed. Lots going on. The big thing, the lease ended at our big shop. So we moved. It was difficult to continue to justify the expense, let's say, on such a shop space. It was a wonderful shop. So much room. It was a dream to work in that place. However, it was hard to justify how expensive it was. So we moved most of our shop back into our basement, the way we had it before our big move into that space. But we're changing things up a lot with the way everything's set up. There is one finished room in our basement that we are turning into a studio. It was an office before. Now it's going to be a studio for filming. And a big thing, I went and changed all the lights down there to the same color temperature.
Mixed color temperature.
Oh, so good. I got LED bulbs for the 4-foot long fluorescent light
tubes.
Fixtures.
Yeah.
I had to figure out what a ballast bypass was. I did all that. And now the entire basement is bathed in 600K light everywhere. Very happy about that.
600K, nice. Just 5,500, of course, around daylight. It's we often talk about the changing look of like a cityscape as municipalities change the street lights from the old lights to the old Michael Mann movies. If you look at a movie like Collateral, all based in LA, it's so the street lights of Los Angeles are iconic look of that, but as they move to cooler LEDs, the look of that look goes away. It's kind of like the shift, from gas lamps to electricity, but also in home studios, that kind of look of the basement of those fluorescents that you think of, right? That you can kind of emulate some of that, but it's completely different, but nicely done.
Yeah.
Adapting existing fixtures. What about projects that you've been working on? We saw recently you were working on obviously more foam, but interesting combination of 3D printing and foam.
Yeah, we did. I have a helmet behind me here. One of them, this guy right here, was a texture project. We 3D printed some textures, and then used those textures as stamps to add some more. I I guess, add more texture to our foam projects. Kishore, you said earlier that you gave that a shot. How'd it go?
Yeah, so I printed just a quick stamp on my Prusa and then tried it. And so the stamping worked so well, like shockingly well.
Yeah.
Like I think when I watched your video, you had this look where your mouth was wide open. You're like, I can't believe this is working so well.
Right.
I had that same feeling, and then I ruined it by being too aggressive with my heat gun when I was trying to just like seal the foam, and you can lose a lot of the detail, which is one of the things you mentioned in the video. So I should have, not played that at 2x speed and listened more carefully to it. But it was, I never thought of bringing those, like that world of foam and the 3D printer that's sitting there together. And you really made a beautiful, X-Wing helmet based off of that like had more detail in it that I think you could have achieved through other means, but this seemed a lot faster. Is that your kind of take on it too?
It's tricky, like that embossed look that doesn't like mar the surface, right? Like if you were trying to texture something with the hot knife, it would actually melt some of the surface detail. I think there's something very specific about the embossed look you get with these stamps. It's a little bit different than some of the other things I've seen. You can make the way the foam works, you can actually make it look pillowed or quilted a little bit, because the edges, no matter how hard the edge is on your stamp, it's still going to round a little bit, and you can use that to your advantage. And I don't know how I would replicate that in a different manner. So I think it's a pretty cool technique.
Durability wise, what's the longest lasting thing you've done is it that helmet that you've done with this process, and how long do you anticipate it sticking,
Yeah, it should stay that way forever unless it gets heated up a lot. Heat seems to be the way that the foam like relaxes or tightens. I'm not exactly sure what happens to the foam, but heat will get rid of the texture. My helmet I sealed with Plastidip and paint. If it got hot enough to ruin the texture, it would probably bubble the paint as well, which has happened. I left a helmet, my Lord Shack's helmet. I left it in a car that was 100 degrees outside.
Oh my gosh!
And it did. The paint bubbled. It's still like that too. It looks a little bit like he got hit with acid. Kind of awesome.
Can imagine being in like Atlanta in the summer, the height of summer, wearing your textured armor and losing fidelity in the armor as you're going through the Atlanta streets. Yeah, that wouldn't be good. Oh. But a fascinating process. And good.
It opened up a lot of potential for me, because the one thing that I've always struggled with is foam helmets. I almost feel guilty admitting that on a call with Bill right now, but just curved shapes and foams, I've always had trouble with it, and the painting to get to kind of smooth over my kind of mistakes has been a skill that I need to work on. This texturing kind of takes out a lot of that the processes that I was not doing well, and so it makes like foam helmets like a much more doable process for me to get a level of detail in there that I don't have to achieve through like very specific painting techniques. So I'm actually really excited to build a full helmet with this. I don't know what yet. I've kind of experimented with a couple different things, because not a ton of helmets have like uber texture on them, but I think there's a lot you can do, because you're basically, it's anything you can 3D print into a stamp.
Sure,
is going to be able to be transformed.
One of the things I like the most about it is just adding a little hit of texture somewhere on your prop or your costume. You don't have to. I know that every superhero costume is just littered with texture from head to toe. You don't have to do that, Marvel and everyone else making superhero movies, just because you can. You don't have to. I love seeing like a nice flat area of color broken up by a little bit of texture. You can also just design your own 2D stamp on your 3D printer that's text. If you want to make the side of your helmet have some embossed text that's easy to paint and outline by hand without doing it all by hand, you could totally print out some 3D print a stamp that's the text of whatever you need. I think that would look awesome. In fact, I should do that later today. That sounds like fun.
You're going to make a helmet that just says Bill on the side.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, you're right, because a lot of helmets in science fiction and in fantasy, especially, are hammered metals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is you think of like a Loki helmet or something, or
Yeah.
a Thor helmet, and so it's not necessarily going to have the texturing in that way, but an embossing, like you think about like a maker's mark hammered
Yeah.
onto a helmet, right? You can totally do that with this.
Absolutely.
It was also your foray into just selling digital files.
Mm-hmm.
How's that been?
That's been
Versus,
good. We've tried some other, like I have a couple of blasters that we sell the files for, my Blade Runner blaster and my Vash the Stampede revolver. And those do really well. It's great because I can't mold and cast thousands of these for people, and everyone's getting 3D printers now, so I can just sell the files, which is wonderful. But yeah, these print files, it's not a prop that you print. You literally print a tool that you use to make the props, and
yeah,
that's fantastic. People love that too.
yeah.
Um, and then
Scalable for the printer they have.
exactly, yeah, and it's a
Customizable.
simple enough thing where if you have basic 3D modeling knowledge, you can make some of your own pretty quickly and easily too. And I hope people are doing that.
Totally. I mean, it's so impressive, some of the things people are doing with the printers these days because of the ease and availability. I mean, Kishore has a FDM printer, your form, and there are so many resin printers out there, like Willow Creative. I don't know if you follow their
Oh
builds,
yeah,
but they do they've done printed scale mail and chain mail off of
yeah,
a resin bed, where literally, as you peel it off of the bed, it is fully connected pieces of chainmail.
yeah. Print in place. Pretty
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. So cool. Well, thank you again for being on the podcast. We're going to start with the format's a little bit different these
All
days.
right.
So we're going to start with a little bit of news and kind of go over some big stories and topics that we want to dive into. But we'll always do our Marvel Universe check-in, our Disney check-in, and we are now 1 week away on Loki Watch. 1 week away from the Loki TV show. I think it's next Wednesday. This is it? No, yeah, next Wednesday, right? It's the 9th. Yeah,
Mhm.
next Wednesday that premieres. I think there's like new trailers, new clips. Not watching anything at this point. It's amazing that people already, speaking of like 3D modelers out there and Patreons, and people have already done busts and sculpts of characters just from the trailers. And I could not be more excited. It feels like uh, Falcon and Winter Soldier, WandaVision, both fantastic shows, but this feels like something completely different. Even you guys both hyped?
I haven't actually haven't watched those previous two shows that you just mentioned. I know. I'm sorry. So sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine, Bill. They're fine. Like it wasn't must see appointment viewing, but what it was is in a time when we're literally all apart, forced apart by the pandemic. For me, it was an excuse to talk to a lot of people
Mm.
about something around the water cooler that had no stakes attached to it whatsoever. And that's what I loved about the show. And so that's what I'm hoping for Loki. We'll see. We're kind of emerging from all of this, so I actually saw people again. So I wonder if the water cooler nature of this is going to degrade as we start to emerge from the pandemic a little bit.
I think from the two shows previously that aired, the fanaticism over them, Marvel, we're all obsessed with the movies, but the shows, because of the week by week release schedule, just created so much more water cooler talk, extended the conversations, and maybe for better or worse, because some of the theories were kind of crazy, and maybe people built up shows or what they wanted in their head, and what didn't match exactly what was delivered on screen. But there are movies coming, and Loki. My expectation, because this is supposed to be, I assume you've seen Endgame, Bill. This
Yes, I
is
saw
the
it.
Loki in Endgame that was in the 2012 Battle of New York that stole the Tesseract. So it's a younger Loki,
Right.
not the one that died in the beginning of Infinity War. Spoilers. So my expectation is, I don't know if this Loki will merge back into the MCU by the end of this show. This might be it for Tom Hiddleston as Loki, even though there's going to be a Thor movie coming out that they just wrapped filming for.
I saw that. Yeah. Chris Hemsworth just tweeted a ridiculous photo of him and Taika Waititi.
As Korg in the full performance capture, the motion
That was
cap
not
suit.
what was ridiculous about that photo.
Oh yes,
The-
there was there were some guns in that photo. Chris Hemsworth's arms, he's jacked. Let's be clear. Let's be clear. The pandemic has not stopped him from going to his gym. So looking very forward to that. Of course, Black Widow is coming out in about a month's time, early July, and that's going to be a Disney premiere. Pay $30 if you have a Disney Plus subscription to get access to that. Either of you thinking about going to a theater to watch that, or potentially watching at home?
I'm probably still going to be doing home viewing for a while. But if I can watch the next Thor movie from my house, I'm absolutely going to. Ragnarok is both mine and my wife's favorite movie in the whole series. So and since Taika is doing the next one, I'm sold. $30, yeah, I can watch it from my couch. Perfect, I'm in.
Look, I'm all for people watching it from home. I think July, I'm going to a movie theater. The Alamo Drafthouse here in San Francisco is reopening in July. I want to have the experience of like a date night out, like where we go and have a meal and watch a movie together. And to me, like that's only half about the movie that I see. A lot of it is like I want to go out and like have a social experience out in the world. And I think it's going to be super weird seeing it for the first time. But I've had a bunch of friends across the country that have gone to movie theaters in recent weeks and said, yeah, it was okay. If like it definitely, don't expect a ton of precautions set in place for you. Like people might sit near you, like all that kind of stuff. And like the popcorn is still stale. There's only one concession open for some reason. All that kind of stuff that comes with going to the movies is still all there. So I think I have it built up in my head, but I just want to go. I just want to go out and like feel normal again. And I feel like that's a marker for me. So I'm definitely going to go. I still don't think Black Widow is the right movie to see as my first movie out.
I'm going to put something out there because this past week we paid for and watched Cruella, the Emma Stone, Cruella DeVille prequel movie on Disney Plus. And that is a film. It's fantastic. It's incredibly well production design. The costumes are incredible. It's a film that I wish we saw on the big screen. It's not one I would normally peg as, oh, this is a must see in theaters, but it's absolutely one that I felt was shorted because we watched it even at a big screen at home, to not have it giant, the fashion and the costume and the makeup on a big Dolby Cinema screen. That was one where the director clearly designed the film to be viewed in that way. And I think Black Widow for sure. A Quiet Place came out also this past weekend and did gangbusters. Broke all kind of lockdown movie records. And that one feels like another one to watch in theaters with a big crowd, where the munching of the popcorn actually is part of the experience because you want to eat as quietly as possible because of how tense the movie is. But
honestly, I don't care. I'll see a bad movie at this point. Like, it's just like whatever you got, Hollywood. I'm ready. I'm honestly thinking pretty seriously about seeing Fast 9 as my first movie because come on,
that would be one. That would be to do it. Yeah.
They're gonna probably make it to the moon in this movie. I want to see that on the big screen.
Dom buys Dogecoin. They go to the moon. That's the pitch. That's the log line for Fast 9. Yeah, it's meme currency. All right, moving on to other bits of news. Season 2 of Lego Masters has dropped on Fox. This is just linear television these days, but I was a big fan of the first season. We're doing a lot of competition show viewing. Recommendations also, if you enjoy the Great British Bake Off, or Baking Show as it's called in the US, the same production company did 2 other similar shows, competition shows. They did the Great Pottery Throwdown, of which there I believe is 4 seasons. That's on HBO Max. We just binged that at home here. I love these shows, maybe because they're like British and everyone on the show is so charming and feels like an Aardman character.
Yes.
They feel like they could be, you could just like animate stop motion rabbits and lions over the dialogue, but also the crafts person, like the ability that they have in this short time to make these amazing things is just really incredible. And it's all really even as a competitive show, it's not combative,
right?
The tone is really heartwarming. They also did a series called The Great British Sewing Bee, and I think that's only on BritBox, is a subscription service with all UK shows. But those are highly recommended if
Yeah,
you're into Bake
we
Off.
took the same journey. We did all of the baking show, and we were craving more. We did all the pottery show. Everyone cries at the end of every episode and hugs.
The judge, like,
Yeah,
baking
Keith.
show has Paul Hollywood, right? Which is like he's their Simon Cowell. He's the guy that's like slick hair, but he gives you the Hollywood handshake, and he clearly knows his stuff, but clearly a personality that's bigger than the show now. On the Pottery Throwdown, their judge is a guy who gets so emotional
Mm-hmm.
over clay and pottery. He cries at every evaluation. He's a Roald Dahl character
Yeah,
brought to life.
Actually, we just watched the Chocolate Factory, the old one, like a week ago. So that fits
Totally
perfectly.
right. Yeah.
I had a friend online call this class of shows competence porn, because
Yeah.
instead of watching like a bunch of random people just yell at each other, you're watching people with talent do stuff within constraints. So my wife and I have been watching Blown Away, which is a glassmaking show that's on Netflix. Very similar, has a little bit more drama because it's literally a fragile medium. The Repair Shop, which is another British show that's on Netflix, which is basically like that PBS show. What's that called? The one where they bring in their heirlooms.
Antique Roadshow.
Antique Roadshow meets like makers because they're
Restoration.
repairing things. Yeah. And it's adorable seeing like the craftsmanship from that show. I love these because it's sort of the antidote to the moment. It's very joyous. Again, nothing really at stake with something at stake. I really liked the Lego show. Will Arnett was actually a surprisingly good host. So I'm curious how they do this again, because some of the sculptures they came out with in season 1 were breathtaking in like the short amount of time. And usually you don't, like, even when you go to Lego conventions, you don't see them making. You see like the finished product. So I actually enjoyed the process of them making these big sculpts.
And with all these shows, there's a marked difference between the first season and subsequent seasons. Like, the production team has all their learnings, knows what the audience is going to want, how to film the whatever they're making in the best light with the best cinematography. But also the competitors are more aware. Like, the difference between season 1 and 2 of the Great Pottery Throwdown, you could tell the show was a hit. And people watched in the UK, and so they were able to get a better cast of competitors, more diverse cast, more interesting cast of different talents. And I think the same thing applies for the Lego show, where Lego is a universally like known medium, and everyone has familiarity with it. But seeing the first show, the competitors of this new season were able to watch the format, know what the challenges were, the type of things they'd be asking of them, and so they come better prepared, honestly, for this new season, and that elevates again the competence that we're all looking for in watching these.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of recommendations in TV space.
Oh, yeah.
That's great TV. I'm going to go to movie theaters for the big, splashy Marvel films. I'm going to stay at home for the competence porn. But Kishore, last bits of news. You got some science updates?
Yeah, so the James Webb Telescope, which is a huge space-based telescope that's set to launch in October this year. I say set to launch because it's been set to launch for many years now. It is famously wildly over budget and missed a number of deadlines. This is basically the successor to the Hubble Space Telescope in what it's going to be able to see, except it can see outside of visible spectrums of light and see into UV. It, again, has announced a slip in date. It was initially set to launch from Chile in around October 31st. They're saying mid-November now, though it might slip further. One of the reasons that came up is the craziest thing I've heard in a press conference in a long time, which is NASA has to transport the rocket that is going up and the telescope, and they have to do it by boat, essentially, down to South America. And one of the concerns they cited was piracy at sea.
Oh, geez.
Wow.
And so they're not like releasing any details of when it's being transported. And I was like, is that a real sentence I heard in 2021? Like, it was wild. There's also a lot of things like with the rocket itself has been under review for a fairing issue since 2020. Knock on wood, this isn't a huge delay, and we're still going to see this go up in at the end of this year, because James Webb, as a successor for Hubble, is going to produce likely things like Hubble produced, which were, earth shattering in a lot of ways.
Incredible imagery. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the
The
last
Sea
thing I
of
want to mention,
Thieves. I want to say, Bill, as the resident Sea of Thieves enthusiast.
Right.
Yeah.
Sounds
How do you feel about that? Yes. Go Pirates.
This sounds like a movie I'd be willing to go to the theaters to see. Bunch of boats having to transport a rocket and pirates attack. Sign me up. Actually, let's hope pirates don't attack. Let's hope it's very boring.
It feels like a plot to an Ocean's film. Like Oceans, like the actual Ocean's 11 should be about something on the ocean and stealing a giant space telescope. I have one other bit of science news. The WHO announced new names for all the variants that we've been talking about, and they're going with Greek letters. So alpha will refer to what was formerly called the UK variant, or B117, because a lot of the scientific names, that B117 actually refers to its lineage, genetic lineage. You might hear it called N501Y, which has to do with like the location of where a mutation is occurring. And that's how it's entered into this, genetic database called GISAID. And so all of this is to simplify that and take away these like place-based names. So Alpha is the UK one. The one that everyone is monitoring is Delta. This is the one that has emerged out of India. And there's a really great summary of all of the variants, their transmissibility, and how effective the vaccines are from Eric Topol, who's a great follow on Twitter. TLDR, vaccines are still effective against all the variants, but we're monitoring some closer than others, particularly Delta, because we've seen a rise in cases in the UK, even with their high vaccination levels, related to this Delta variant. And so we're watching that very, very closely right now.
And I know Jeremy isn't here on the podcast this week, but I'm going to ask on his behalf any updates as to vaccination protocols and testing and clinical trials for children and younger children, especially.
So we're in a stage where it's already approved for 12 to 15, and that's probably the critical age range, because once you get younger than 12, the risk of even contracting the disease goes way down, even in congregate settings like school. It's not impossible, but the likelihood goes way down. The earliest that we're hearing is September still. The evidence remains exceptionally positive that's emerging right now, but I'm going to wait till there's a full set of data on 2 to 11 before I sort of pass any judgment, and that'll come towards the end of the summer. I think we're going to be really careful here for multiple reasons. That the spike protein, which is the target that we are trying to create with these vaccines, a version of that spike protein to induce the response, well, that spike protein like enters a cell via an ACE2 receptor. That ACE2 receptor tends to develop during childhood, and that's why children tend to be less susceptible to the virus than adults, because they just don't have the same receptor the spike protein comes in on. So there's open questions about just like the physiology of children and how this vaccine will work. I don't think there's any enhanced risk, but I think they're just going to be a little more careful just because things are just a little bit different here. But everything I'm hearing is really positive. And end of summer.
Hey everyone, Norm here. Before we continue, I want to let you know that this week's episode of This Is Only a Test is made possible with support from Storyblocks. If you're a content creator, you need a Storyblocks membership. Storyblocks helps you bring all your stories to life without sacrificing your vision due to time, budget, or resources. Tell the best version of your story with affordable subscription plans and tools that scale to meet your needs. And Storyblocks' ever-growing library consists of 4K footage, After Effects and Premiere Pro templates, music, images, sound effects, and much more. Their unlimited all-access plan gives you unlimited downloads, and the assets are royalty-free, so you can use your downloaded content for commercial and personal use. Their Restock initiative is here to change the landscape of stock media by partnering with creators in underrepresented communities to build collections that represent those communities in an authentic light. Storyblock's first cohort of filmmakers features the layered experiences of the BIPOC and LGBTQI community, and Storyblocks will also be launching Queer Spaces and Faces. This initiative will feature 6 new contributors from the LGBTQI community, each creating a collection of 50 video clips that feature their community authentically and relatably. It's a really cool initiative. You can check that out by trying a Storyblocks membership. Explore their library and subscribe today at storyblocks.com/onlyattest. Again, that's storyblocks.com/onlyattest. Now back to the show. All right, that is it for our quick news update, and let's move on to our top topics of the week. With Bill here, one of the things we want to talk about is the convention season and pop culture conventions. Some dates have been announced. Comic-Con moved to Thanksgiving weekend. New York Comic-Con, the big ones are opening back up, but also some of the kind of local ones as well. Emerald City moved toward the end of the year. A lot of these are run by the same big umbrella organizations who've developed protocols that stretch across them. But understandably, attendees and even vendors are wary of going back and committing to these with some uncertainty still with travel. As people who go to conventions, Bill, as someone who does the convention circuit, as a guest, as an attendee, what's your outlook like for this year? What are what kind of things are you keeping an eye out for before you commit?
So there's a huge difference if I'm going to a convention as an attendee or if I'm being hired to go to a convention. Just because if I'm going as an attendee, for example, Dragon Con, I might do a couple panels there, but generally I pay for my own hotel, I pay for my own flights. I want to go and have fun at Dragon Con. That means I spend a lot. We spend the most at Dragon Con. But it's always worth it, right? It's always worth it. In fact, 2019, the last year we went, was probably the best year. It was the year I had the most fun. It's always worth it. So what I'm weighing is, I'm totally vaccinated. My wife is totally vaccinated. We personally feel safe, and we're getting better with going out into the world. But there's so many other factors. So with Dragon Con, we have to decide, is it worth the expense to have what will likely be a watered down experience, right?
Right.
With precautions and everything, and likely fewer people, fewer things happening. Is it going to be worth it? And for that particular example, we decided, no, I don't think it is. It's a lot of travel. We're going to be flying to the East Coast. We're in Seattle. We'll be flying to the East Coast to see family next month. That's going to be a long trip. Flying east is always a pain. So we're probably not going to go to Dragon Con. However, Silicon over here on the West Coast, that's only 2 days, not 5. And it's something that I'm going to work for. That makes more sense to me. Again, I feel safe. I feel protected. I'm all vaccinated. But that's much less of a commitment. It's just going to be me, not me and Britt. And it's work. I'm going to be focusing on what I'm doing for work. Probably won't be socializing a whole lot.
Are you kidding me? We're getting beers.
Oh, I mean,
Bill, right?
Yes.
I think that's a subtle way of Bill saying, like, I'm not going to hang out with you guys when I in San Jose in a couple weeks. I'm contrasting hanging out at Silicon with hanging out at Dragon Con, which is a very different beast.
Yes.
So that's kind of where we land right now. We've been making decisions about things like this kind of on a week by week basis, so we'll see how we feel. Like when Emerald City rolls around here in Seattle, that's in December, I believe, and we'll see how things are by then. But I also don't know if I'm going to end up doing any work there or not, or if I'm just going to go as an attendee. We'll see. But that seems to make a huge difference to me.
Yeah,
the DragonCon thing. Well, I was going to say, the DragonCon thing is interesting because the organization has made it tough for attendees to turn down going this year and vendors because you lose your reservation spot for future years, and it's kind of the momentum that breaks.
Yeah, we've been grandfathered into the Hyatt room every year for like 6 or 7 years in a row, and we're gonna lose that, which means the next year we're gonna have to join the fray and try and get a hotel room again. I'll cross that bridge when I get to it.
It'll work
I
out.
also have some friends who usually end up with extra hotel rooms that I can get one from.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dragon Con is an unusual one. I'm going to come back to that because it is also my favorite con of the year, and I've had complicated feelings about it. So generally, I've like separated in my mind like the cons that I go to for like the day, and like I'm around the convention, I'm going to like hang out, maybe go to a couple panels. Like I'm more into that mode where I can go for the day and then like either go to sleep in my own bed or just like leave, just like straight up
Yeah,
leave and do
yeah,
something else versus the ones where you're just like fully immersed for multiple days and you're just in it the entire time. And so I'm not quite there yet
yeah.
mentally to be like the full on, let's go 100 miles an hour and hit it.
Right, which is
But
what
I
makes
saw,
Dragon Con so amazing, right? You get to live
yeah,
in this fantasy world for 5 straight days and ignore the rest of the world.
100%. And seeing some images come out of some small cons that have actually happened over the past few months, like there's a couple in Florida that happened. Like I miss the joy of just like walking around, seeing some people in cosplay, going to a couple panels. So I definitely think I'm gonna have like a slow start to convention season, and pick and choose maybe like two that I'm gonna go to this year, and then hopefully like ramp up full time. I think the hard thing that I've been dealing with is like I usually like to go and cosplay at least like one convention, if not two. And I don't think I'm doing that. Like it's a ton of work on top of like all the other like mental energy I'm spending. But
Hmm.
I like on the flip side is I want to see a bunch of people in cosplay because it
Right.
brings me so much joy, right? So I have complicated feelings about convention. So I think I'm going to try it out. I think Silicon is actually going to work out super well for me as like a starter con for me to get
Yeah,
into
I
because it's
felt the
going to be
same
more
way.
manageable.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And conventions are unique in terms of the type of events because we talk about movie theaters and those are big gatherings, but those are kind of passive social experiences in which you are, with whoever you're going with, and as a group, there's a energy in the crowd, and yes, it benefits from having a packed theater, but you're not directly interacting. And the same with like a business convention. Obviously the things like E3 and GDC or and big conventions like F8 like are virtual, but even if they were in person, they're mostly about seminars and panels, and the social stuff kind of is peripheral around that. With a pop culture convention, it is a social convention, like especially
Mhm.
Dragon Con. You're going and there's no other event like that. Even like a sporting event. A sporting event, I guess, comes close, but like the point of putting 100,000 people into buildings to converse, to hang out, to have basically a big bar atmosphere. Um, that's we all miss it. And so from your friends in the cosplay community and the convention going community, like, are you guys all talking about going like to the same conventions, being the first one to go, like which are the ones you'll all go to together for the first time, or what's the feeling
Right.
like?
Right now on my personal Facebook feed, about every other post is a friend going, "So who's going to Dragon Con?" That's really
Mhm.
it's a lot of
Yeah,
people have, and people's opinions are all over the place,
right.
and all completely valid too. So I don't see any sort of collective mentality. I see a lot of different personal opinions about when people are going to feel like they're comfortable enough to go into these things. No one in my friend group anyway have I noticed go, okay, guys, we'll all do Emerald City, and that'll be the first one that we're doing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I think also, and Kishore, maybe it's something you can speak to is because conventions unite us culturally because we're all fans of this thing, we're all going for this purpose. But obviously, in the past year, the both the pandemic and the political atmosphere has put people at odds in terms of their personal beliefs on certain things. How do you get around that at a convention, right? Like there's going to be some tension, I imagine, for people and how they want to behave, even though ostensibly we're all going to celebrate a certain thing. Um, things will come to the fore that were not part of the conversation before.
Yeah, maybe. Like, I think Bill is right. Like, none of these cons were a monolith before. They're not going to be a monolith going forward, and like the people going to them. I have a lot of friends, like kind of Bill alluded to, that are ready to go. They're like ready to go. They're like have their eyeliner out. They have their makeup bag. Like they're going, and they're ready to go full speed. Like more power to them. I kind of think we won't have answers to like what these cons will feel like, what the tensions might be until we actually just go it. Like we have to rip the band-aid a little bit. And for me, ripping the band-aid is starting with like something a little smaller, like a just a daytime run type thing, and then ramping back up to it. The other thing that I think is that I really miss is there's a lot of small groups and artists that I like to frequent and support that it's been a lot harder to do online that I used to see at conventions. I would buy like a thing from them, and it's like some I hear have been doing fine. A lot of others have been suffering because conventions can be big business for them. And so I kind of want to go and support like the community as a whole. And a lot of small retailers and artists that I love. So I'm hoping to start that train up again, and be in a position where next year it's going to be like let's hit the gas. It's never going to be the same. There's always I think there's people that are going to be out of the convention scene forever because there's also like an inertia to it. Like all of a sudden, if you stop going, then you don't necessarily have the momentum to keep going again. So I think it's going to take a while to build back up to where it was, but that's fine. So I'm in a rip the band-aid off kind of mentality here. And I just have a boatload of optimism that any tensions that'll appear because of the pandemic and all of the other stuff will start to melt away. But they're only going to melt away if we actually go to a convention.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet that years from now we'll look back at like 2010 to 2020 as this like weird golden era for pop culture conventions and cosplay. I feel like I'm not saying it'll be bad after this, but it's going to be different. And we will fondly look back on the good old days of Dragon Con and conventions.
Do you think the bathrooms will be clean? Like
by now,
finally?
I hope.
Yeah. Oh, you would hope that's one of the positive changes.
Yeah.
Is that protocol for bathrooms? You know, the spacing, some of the social distancing, the regular cleaning, the hygiene will hopefully be something that people are more mindful of. And you would hope that the conventions will be unifying forces, like regardless of personal beliefs and how you've gone through and taking care of yourself through the pandemic. Like seeing someone face to face, having real conversations with them will kind of bring everyone together. At least that's the hope. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. All right, let's move on to our next topic. We talked a little bit earlier about 3D printing and the projects that you've been working on. I've been doing a bunch of testing with 3D printing here, and I have a bunch of resin printers, and I just started testing a new FDM printer. And I don't know, Bill, you have both types of printers, right, in your shop as well?
Yep.
Convince me, and I was talking to Joel, the 3D printer nerd, about this, but convince me that there's still some utility for hobbyists for FDM printers.
Well, tell you what, you can get some really big, really affordable. I was going to say, well, if you wanted to print a helmet, oh no, you can do that too.
Well, cost-wise, yeah, you can print a helmet with the resin printer, like the Piopoly, the giant phenoms, but those are outside the the $300 to $400 price range we're talking about. So yes, that absolutely is a use case.
Although I have seen people build whole sets of armor just by cutting it up into tiny pieces and printing it on their machine. I guess the upside of having an FDM machine is if you want to print stuff big and fast. Is really so you can print like the basic form of your armor, let's say, and then print all the details on your resin printer. But big and if you have anything you want to print big and fast without a lot of detail, FDM is going to be the way to go for that. If not, I think a lot. I wouldn't say most or all, but a lot of the hobby applications for a 3D printer that most people use them for probably be covered by one of those cheaper resin printers. I don't know. I have a Form 2. I think I want to get one of the cheaper resin printers just to play with it because they look
You
phenomenal.
should. I mean, if you have the
Um,
cleaning workflow, if you
yeah,
have
yeah.
isopropyl alcohol, you have the cleaning tanks, you have the curing stations, I think you would be impressed by the speed. Now,
Mhm.
you said FEM was good for big and fast. Absolutely agree for big
Sure,
and
yeah.
cost also, right? It's going to
Yep.
be like non-toxic for PLA. You're
Mhm.
not going to require the kind of safety gear you need for SLA or MSLA. Uh, but speed-wise, I think the MSLAs, like the forms are high quality, but they're running
Right.
the laser,
Yeah, yeah.
drawing every layer. If, with MSLAs and the DLPs, doing
Yeah.
every layer at 2 seconds per layer,
Yeah, you know what?
it's fast.
I don't think I used the M no. I can't remember. Piopoly had a bigger machine that I used. I only used it a couple times, but I don't think I've used the DLP machine. Like I
Mm.
haven't experienced how quick they can be. Which is why I
Yeah.
need to probably get one and play with it.
Norm, have you tried the super cheap like Elegoo like $200 resin printers? Like, because I've
Well,
heard mixed things about those.
the
Oh,
one I
there's
have
one
there
right
is
there.
there's one right there. That's the Mars 2 Pro. That's the Elegoo. That's the entry level. I think on sale it gets down to 250. You can get 300 for the 2P or the 2 Pro or the 1S. I want to say I forget the names of them now, but if you have the space and you want to learn the workflow, you can't. It doesn't get any better than this. For spending about $300 on an SLA printer, $30 for a liter of resin, and a liter of resin gets you so many like miniatures, tabletop
Yeah.
miniatures.
I didn't
Uh,
realize the resin got that cheap either.
yeah, and it's the same. I mean, we see this in a lot of businesses where once the Chinese companies get into it, they're pushing out machines nonstop, like at these big conventions at the what used to be like the Computex and stuff like that. They'll it's almost like remember with the quadcopters and DJI, just every 6 months there'd be a new quadcopter, and here it feels like every 3 to every 6 months there's a new resin printer with a different screen because they're using commoditized parts now, using UV lights. They're making their own lensing for diffusing of the UV. They
Mhm.
they just buy off the shelf LCDs for the masking. There's no need for complicated lasers. Even the DLP stuff is more affordable now. It's mind blowing that you can, for $300 print get something with a bed size of like 3 by 5 by 7, which is that's a good mini. You can print little 1/6
You've
scale
you've
heads and
convinced
costumes.
me. You've convinced me, Norm. I'm buying one.
I'll send you some links. Send you that's an affiliate link.
All right.
So you can buy it and benefit
It-
testing.
And I'm throwing away all my FDM machines.
Well, no, that's the thing.
not
Like
true. That's
at the same time, these companies are also releasing FDM machines because they're rock solid and reliable too. And so much of that is due to the efforts of the innovations, by Prusa Research, right? All that stuff being
Mhm.
open.
Yeah.
The
I will say
slicers, yeah.
I wish that I have an Ultimaker 2 Plus extended. It's an awesome machine. I wish I had filament detection, and I wish I had power loss recovery. Both things that a Prusa machine and pretty much every FDM
Yeah.
machine has now.
Yeah.
So it's an awesome machine. It just doesn't have those newer features, and I don't think there's a way. There's probably some way to manually add it, but Ultimaker doesn't have an add-on I could just buy. I don't think.
So
maybe-
multi-filament
yeah.
printing, like multicolor
yeah.
filament, like that's something that the Corellities and the Prusas you can put in. So for dissolvable supports or different colors. One thing I'm finding is in terms of the basic combination of resin and FDM is printing the bases and the stands in FDM, because resin, it's more difficult to get a nice flush
Right.
flat base. So if I just want a little display stand, that doesn't have a lot of surface detail, it's just basically a cylinder or cone or something.
Mhm.
Printing that on FDM makes a lot of sense to me.
Here's a good use case. Let's say your resin printers are all printing something and you need to print something else. Well, let's use that extra FDM machine you've got kicking around.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yes. and it's just fascinating that these processes are maturing so quickly. It felt like for so long, for the first almost 10 years of 3D printing, it was inaccessible, lots of repair required, lots of startups in the US that started and failed or
Mhm.
started and struggled, and now just an explosion of availability and resourcing. And really, the only questions are with these new printers and how cheap they are is durability and how long they'll last. Whether it'll be easy to swap out the print heads, extruders, or what support and repair and maintenance is like.
Some of the printers are cheap enough though. Like I have friends who run prop shops and everything. They'll just, here's my Ender Pro. We just run it into the ground. Get another one.
That's a really unfortunate. And I think that's this philosophy that a lot of these companies are putting out, that they'll just expect you to buy a new one every year and a half, and no one knows how to replace FEP film, or no one knows how to swap out an extruder, and or they feel like they buy something, they got to buy the new one, and that's really unfortunate too. But yeah, it's an interesting thought process of like, when someone asks what printer should I buy, I'm like, I struggle to come up with a reason to recommend an FDM one over an SLA one.
I still have this idea in the back of my head that my tolerance for failure on an FDM is going to be so much higher than on a resin printer. Because even if resin has come down to what, like $30 a bottle or how much ever it is, it's still it feels like more of a cost than like a spool of filament, where I'm just like, whatever, spool of filament. And so I think there's a mental shift that still has to happen there. The other thing is that the resins stink for the most part. I know there's like water washable resins that are coming out that are supposedly lower odor. Have you tried any of those, Norm?
Yeah. I've used a bunch of water washable ones, and just because it's water washable does not mean it's non-toxic. It does not mean it's necessarily safe for the environment. It just means that water is something that can clean it, but you still should, and this is a practice that not enough people follow, but you still should dispose of the resin, cure it fully, and dispose of it properly. And this, it's not a problem at scale yet, but certainly in the community, it's not something that's talked about enough. The proper handling of materials and ventilation too. People are building heated shrouds for better curing, but also you should consider real ventilation. We had a lot of questions. Some people asked, "Can I run this in my bedroom?" And previously, I for an FDM printer for PLA, I'm like, "Yeah, open a window, you'll be okay." But for a resin printer, I'm like, "No, don't run that in your bedroom." No, yeah, not a good idea.
Even
the IPA
sound like it puts me in the mood. The smell of resin in the evening.
Well, and it's not just the resin itself, because a lot of resins, technically, it's not even as toxic as the cleaning, as rubbing alcohol. It's having like liters of rubbing alcohol in buckets in my garage.
Very flammable rubbing alcohol.
Oh my God, right? Yeah. Yeah. So lots of considerations, but yeah, good to get your perspective, Bill. And I would recommend you try one of those entry level resin printers as well. Okay, let's move on to our last bit of topic. Third week in a row. Is this third or fourth? I don't even know, but we're going to talk about Demeo again. It is our current VR obsession. Bill, you accompanied us on our most recent quest, but you're a little more experienced. What's been your, like, after going through multiple rounds of Demeo, what's been your takeaway, and what would you want more from the game?
Oh, I have a list. It's good though. It's got good bones, Good
bones.
It has good bones. So I played a bit on my own, and then I played like I think 3 rounds with my brother. The two of us teaming up to do the adventure, the module, the Elven Queen module. So I started to kind of figure out, especially the characters' abilities that you can use every turn, like the zap, for example. I started to figure out how to make that really useful. So if an enemy's in a doorway, you can zap him and he's stuck there, and then the enemies behind him can't get through. So I figured out things like that when I was playing a bunch with my brother, which was super fun. But playing with 4 people all at once, like that's the way it's meant to be played. You're just chilling in front of a table with 3 buddies, and you're literally picking up your little pieces, literally picking up little cards. I love it, and I can't wait for them to start plugging more stuff into that game.
What you talked about earlier in terms of the min-maxing of the game, it's so much depth that we felt like that was it's surprising. Like there are things that we didn't realize until our third or fourth playthrough that were happening, like the knocking enemies off tiles and what
Yeah.
direction to attack them in, and things that feel very D&D like. Like there's no dungeon master to set the
Mhm.
rules, but it feels like the developers have put all these considerations in where we wonder like, can I use this card on you instead of me, and what that buff means? Like these are all like,
Yeah.
and these are all the kind of D&D questions, and
Mhm.
by trying it out, it actually sometimes works, and it feels very revelatory as like, wow, this is a very innovative thing that we kind of uncovered as a part of the gameplay.
Sure.
um, it,
Your two different characters can use their abilities in concert to get an effect that you wouldn't figure out previously.
yeah.
I think the game really does a great job of making it easy to learn but difficult to master, sort of thing. Because on the surface it feels very simple, but in the last level, when you have like 9 different cards and there's 8 different enemies and everything, suddenly you're like, I have to be really picky about which of these 8 cards I use. It's good. I would definitely want to play more, and I can't wait for them to make more modules.
Have you settled on using the same character over and over, or are you finding some, renewed interest by switching up the characters that you play?
I do like switching around, but the archer is my favorite. Having 2 arrows, you can shoot that guy and you can shoot that guy. And there doesn't seem to be any limit on the range. So if you can see a character across the dungeon, you can shoot him. So I've been
Nice.
enjoying the archer the most.
That's what Kishore plays as well.
Yeah,
he's our
because
archer.
it is the best character. That's why I
Yeah.
play it.
Oh, yeah.
Norm. Like it's undoubtedly the best.
This is absolutely a thing that happens with MOBAs, with FPSs, is that our friends group, you kind of lock into your role. It's almost,
Yeah.
there's inertia and momentum there. It's like we because we want to just keep min-maxing. I know maybe it'd be more fun if we force ourselves to try new characters. But like the first characters that we started off with is the one that we're still playing with today. It desperately needs saves. It needs a way to
checkpoint.
or a way to game code or something to retain the state of the game. So in case you're unfamiliar, it's a 4-player VR D&D game, but each quest can go up to 3 hours, even longer, depending if you want to 100% each of the 3 dungeon tiers, and they're procedurally generated. So each experience is going to be different. And there are times that we just can't finish it because we have obligations, family, dinner, all sorts of things. And we need a way, like they've done a great way of letting people jump into the game if you drop. So if you had to go and your character loses, you just type in the code and you get all your cards back. But we want a way to save the state of the game and then come back to it a day later or a couple days later, and not have to do it in one playthrough because your battery might run out on your headset, right?
Yeah, I had you mentioned that we were playing. I was at one tiny dot left on my headset, so I ran and plugged it in. I don't know what would happen if it died halfway through the game. You guys would have been missing your rogue. That's what would happen.
Well, we did a game where of the 4 players, players kept dropping one at a time until it was just one player in the final boss.
Oh no!
It was like a shrinking universe, and then Kishore, the second player, jumped back in and together, saved the day and won at the end. It makes for great storytelling. They're working on new characters, I want to say, like new heroes and also new cards, and obviously new dungeons. Maybe using the same palette but new enemies. So those definitely feel like their legs in this game. It's a $30 game, which is high in VR world, but I mean, we're talking about it week after week, and it absolutely is one of those things that is worth every single penny. And it speaks to the power of the social experience in VR. Population 1, also a $30 game, incredibly fun because it captures that multiplayer social experience. Even the older the Star Trek, the Bridge Crew games, all of that was about getting a group of people together, and having a good time as if we were in the same room. Sorely needed these days. And in terms of VR, one of the things I want to drop is that I'm testing currently the HTC Vive Pro 2, and we'll have a review shortly. What I do want to say is it's a very frustrating headset. Not because it's tough to set up or the experience isn't good. It's high quality display. The form factor is a known quantity, comfortable to use for long periods of time. The best panels so far in terms of LCD panels that you can find in a headset right now, but it's frustrating because of the timing of this release, the kind of missed opportunities that HTC had, and also just the extremely high price. It's $800, I think, for
Ugh.
just the headset, and $1,400
Yeesh.
for the full set with controllers and the base station. So
Wow. Jeez.
some disappointments, and a very interesting case study in where VR hardware is right now, especially with hardware being subsidized on the Facebook Oculus side, basically selling at cost or at a loss, and Valve not needing to make money on their hardware, and not having any initiative to release a Vive or a Index 2, and that being the only other option. There's like stagnation in hardware, but also things that make it tough for companies like HTC or even HP to be competitive with leading edge hardware. Bill, any other projects that you want to talk about or things that you're working on that you can share?
Yeah, a couple things. A week or two ago, Captain Disillusion put out a wonderful video about the flight of the Navigator. And in that video, he showed a recreation of one of the chrome panels from the famed spaceship. I made that panel. Brittany and I vacuum formed a little panel that Alan, aka Captain Disillusion, he 3D modeled it, sent it to me. I printed it, vacuum formed it. We have a video over on our Punish Props Academy YouTube channel. That was so much fun. It was really cool to get to participate in that project. And the video is top notch. I recommend it to everyone.
Captain Disillusion, who's been doing his tone and his style of explainer videos for forever.
Yeah.
And maintaining the persona and the consistency. But the production and the editing is, I can't even fathom how many hours of motion graphics go into that. I mean, they're polished pieces of video.
But he's been working on it for at least 6 months.
Wow.
We filmed our video, our portion, in January. That gives you an idea of how long it took him to put it together. But totally worth it. The second thing I have, we just finished a project. We have a video going up next week. We've been playing a lot of Valheim. We love Valheim. It's great. So we made one of the most epic weapons from Valheim, the Porcupine. It is a giant spiked mace. It is, of course, all foam. It is con-safe. These spikes are coated in a urethane rubber, so they're extremely durable, but they're not going to hurt anyone. And I love this thing. It's really big and ridiculous. And we're going to have a video showing how we made it, I think, on Monday.
That is hilarious.
Can't even set it down.
Comical.
Just end the show with this just hanging out on my shoulder. I had to make a stand, actually. This is so I can set it down. It's almost as hard to set down as the District 9 alien assault rifle.
Nice. So is it hollow inside, and then you inserted the pieces of the urethane spikes out of it?
The spikes are all rubber that are coated in urethane. The top of it here is actually the same pattern I used to make the egg from Game of Thrones and the mini nuke from Fallout. It's the same pattern. I just turned it into an egg-shaped thing, and then all of these foam spikes were glued to it. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. That is hilarious.
Before we start recording, you were talking about a new tool recommendation.
Yeah. So one of the problems with our basement, where I'm going to be working now, is that all the lights are on one circuit and most of the outlets are on that same circuit. So when you turn on a heat gun, sometimes all the lights turn off. I did a little digging and I found, I think the company is Prulde. Prulde. Anyway, they make a wireless heat gun. So it's got a big old lithium-ion battery on it. I think it's like 20 volts. It's a little bit anemic compared to a wall one, obviously, but it's totally portable. It's just a heat gun that you can take wherever you need it. It's just a little slower working with it, but it's awesome. I love it.
How long does the battery last?
I was using it a lot on this mace thing here, and I don't know, I could run it full time for probably 15-20 minutes. Normally that's not how you would use a heat gun, but you could stand it on the battery and just lock it on and just have heat going, and I bet it would run for 15 minutes straight if you did that.
I
And is
like
it
that
just?
as a. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, is it one of those just like generic like power drill batteries that like you
It
stick?
kind of looks like it, yeah.
Hmm.
I don't know if it's compatible with like DeWalt or any of the other ones, but yeah, it totally looks like one of those.
Could be useful for just like heat shrink tubing. If you're doing some soldering, that sounds like a perfect thing. I hate having. I use a USB soldering iron, but like the cord for the heat gun is something that I don't want pulling out the heat gun if I'm wanted that mounted, and it seems like this is a
Totally.
perfect way to work with that. Cool. Very cool. Well, looking forward to that video for that Valheim mace. Yeah, that looks awesome. Kishore, any updates from you? Anything you want to give a shout out to before we wrap up?
No, all things hockey. Hockey's great.
Are you rooting for a specific team? Is there anything?
Of course I am. I'm rooting for the Winnipeg Jets, as I have been forever. It's frustrating, but it's going well so far this year, so I'm going to stop talking about it before I jinx anything. And I'm also going camping this week, so I'll be off next week, but it is I feel like the wave of optimism returning. Like I saw actual people in person the other week, like friends. That was great. A+, 10 out of 10 recommend seeing people.
Yeah, we did the same.
Me too. Yeah, saw my brother and his kids last week.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Yeah, even made eye contact. It was that intimate.
I don't know if I'm ready for that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Bill, for joining us this week. People out there, of course, can follow Bill and Brittany's projects, Punish Props Academy on YouTube, as well as Chinbeard on Twitter. And we'll have links to all of that in the YouTube video description below. But until then, we have another outro here from Great Job. Thank you all for listening. Stay safe. Hope to see you all again soon. Have a good vacation, Kishore, and take care. Here is an outro. Play.
Hi there, I didn't see you.
Test it.
Babyfish creep me out.
Babyfish creep you out? Why does that?
All right. Are we moving on?
That's it for this week.
All right, then.
Test it. I don't remember when we said that.
I'm in that clip and I don't remember when I said that.
Can you guys hear when I swing this? It makes a really good noise.
Oh, yeah.
This is what I miss about conventions, right here.
Yeah, right?